moving on to Oppenheimer, which a lot of people are deeming a little indie project that most people have never heard. A lot of people are deeming it to be the best movie of the year. We shall see. I forgot to read the Barbie synopsis, but I am gonna read the Oppenheimer synopsis. So sorry about that. It's Oppenheimer, but I do think it's worth
like reading. A line, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's like a paragraph. During World War II, Lieutenant General Leslie Groves appoints physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer to work on a secret Manhattan project. Oppenheimer and a team of scientists spend years developing and designing the atomic bomb. Their work comes to fruition on July 16th, 1945, as they witness the world's first nuclear explosion, forever changing the course of history.
Do you know when I said it was a line? It's like 7 words on Letterboxd. That's why.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, it's fucking Oppenheimer. It's the building and creation of the atomic bomb from the point of view of Oppenheimer for the most part. If you haven't seen online, like there's black and white and color. The color is not obviously. The color is supposed to be subjective, and the black and white is supposed to be objective. So a lot of court hearings and things that are documented. I really liked it. I think Tyler is the highest on this movie. So we're going to start with him. I believe it's a 96 or 9.6 out of 10. 9.6 out of 10.
Yep, 9.6 out of 10. Yeah. Tomorrow, Riley and I are going to see it, so I'll be rewatching it. We'll see how it goes. So I saw this in 70 millimeter real IMAX. There's only 19 in America, but thankfully the one near me is one of the real ones. And so basically, what was that, Cam?
I think it's 30.
Oh, I don't know.
It's 30 global. 30
global, 19
global.
Classic Cam being America-centric.
Yeah, my bad.
So Oppenheimer. So as everyone knows, when you go to like theaters, you see like the early screening where they have like general admission public, where like you can just stand in line for a long time, and then like if you get there early enough, hopefully you get in. But this is by far the longest line I'd ever seen. Like so many people got turned away, but nice flex. I got to be in like the critics section, which was one row that was like roped off. So like, which I felt bad because so many people got turned away from my theater because like it was too packed because no one could go in the rope section unless you're on a list. But the rope section was not full, so the whole theater's packed. But for me, 2 seats to my left and 3 seats to my right were empty. I had like room to sprawl out while everyone else is just packed in like crazy. So I was like chilling. I was in the middle of the row, center section, so like right in the middle of the IMAX, and I was just completely absorbed. Like, as we know, and we'll talk more specifics when we get into spoilers, like this movie just grabs you in visually like right away. So I was like, holy shit, like this might be honestly too overwhelming in IMAX. It's just so crazy. But I had a really, really good time with Oppenheimer. I think this is Christopher Nolan's best written movie in terms of it just felt so cohesive. And I feel like a lot of stuff people have criticized him for in the past, he really flexed out here. Like I mentioned on Twitter last night, and a lot of people have been going around saying like, there's underdeveloped relationships with women and they don't show stuff with like Japan or like the test site being taken away from Native Americans. But like Cam just said, this is from Oppenheimer's POV, his subjective view of the world. That stuff never really crossed his mind. And that's kind of the horror of the movie, that he was just so focused on making the bomb that was pretty much just what he's focused on the entire time. For me, I just thought Cillian Murphy, I really don't think I'm going to see a better like lead acting performance this year. He was so good. But the entire cast, everyone knew this since like a year and a half ago. This movie got announced. The cast, there's like 30 people you can point at your screen, be like, I know that guy. And I think every single one of them did very good for what they were given. So this cast is crazy, and I think they all delivered. The visuals were crazy. The fact that he does this all practically is just so bizarre to me because it just looks so good. Like, not even just the bomb scene, but so many just like of the random cutaway stuff that just looks so bizarre. It's like, how do you even do that practically and with just visual effects as opposed to CGI? But yeah, and of course, got to mention Ludwig Göransson's score. Just absolutely suffocating. Like I just so intense. Just had me on the edge of my seat, holding my breath. So much of it. It's so much of this movie. And just in terms of like a dramatic historical biopic, I just don't really think it gets much better than this. The first act, I'd say, was good. Didn't really grab me in though, but I was definitely enjoying it. The second act, I was completely locked in for the lead up to the Trinity test. And then the final act, I know people are mixed on the final act, but for me, it had me absolutely locked in. And yeah, it's a 5-star for me on first watch. I think it might even go up on rewatch just because I really did think this was such a cohesive project from Nolan. I think there's a lot of interesting interpretations you can have of this movie. And I think it's definitely the least Christopher Nolan movie that I've seen, which is all of them, because so many people at this point are used to him being, you know, the Interstellar, Inception, the Batman trilogy, where it's like they're expecting to go to the theater and see a big epic action blockbuster of crazy proportions. But this actually is much more muted, a lot of courtroom, a lot of dialogue. There is the moments of Nolan flair where it is so visually bombastic, but I think a lot of people that might just like be purely casual, like Nolanites just want to see blockbusters, might come away from this being bored because this isn't the typical go to the movies and be locked into just action and explosions left and right the entire time. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like I don't know what people are expecting. It is Oppenheimer. It's a historical biopic. So I'll save the rest for when we get into spoilers, but I think the writing here was just awesome. The acting was awesome. The editing of how they cut the movie as well as the sound editing were both just brilliant to me. I thought they were just completely engaging. And yeah, so like Cam said, 9.6 out of 10 for 5 stars. I'm excited to rewatch it tomorrow. I think I'm going to like it even more. I can see why it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I love history. And personally for me, you can do whatever you want. My recommendation was I went into Oppenheimer blind. Like obviously I knew stuff from learning about stuff in history class, but I didn't do any extra research. But I loved researching after the facts. I kind of like going to the movie just not really knowing too much about what actually happened. Research after the fact. When we get into spoilers, I just want to talk about like how like so much of the stuff that happened, even just the most subtle things, like are straight from like the biography of his life. So like Christopher Nolan did like a great job with like researching, like even just the most subtle moments were like ripped from what people said actually happened in his life. So yeah, very historical dense movie, but I really, really loved it. And it's a 5-star for me. It's my number 1 on the year. And Cam had to step away, so I'll jump it over to George since obviously I know he's a huge Nolan fan.
Yeah, it's
a Nolan fan?
No way.
no shot. I'm way more of an M. Night stan, actually. This was a 5 out of 5 after my first watch. This was a 5 out of 5, and I thought higher of it after a second watch.
I didn't actually know you watched it again and see this.
Yeah, I saw it again.
Opening night?
For Thursday night.
Thursday
night. This was just such a surreal, heart-pounding experience. This is the perfect biopic for Nolan to have taken over. Like I can't have seen him taken over like a Mark Zuckerberg biopic or something like this. This was the perfect like stressful anxiety, massive bombastic biopic that was just perfect for Nolan to tell. Adding in like his non-linear storytelling, going back and forth from Los Alamos to the courtroom to that small little boardroom that they were in, I thought just made for such a stressful experience, such an eye-opening, engaging experience. Not a lot more can be said about Ludwig Göransson's score. I listened to it at the gym yesterday, and my fucking God, does that thing just explode in my ear. I'm pretty much echoing every single thing Tyler said. I absolutely adored this thing. I'm currently redoing my greatest movies of all time list on Letterboxd, and I'm having trouble placing Oppenheimer right now because, like, in my head, I want to put it at 1, but realistically, no. I know, but like the recency bias is coming out like crazy right now. I'm like, fuck me, man. I want to just stick this at 1 and tell everyone to go fuck themselves. Cillian Murphy is such a star. The things this man can do with like just his eyes is unbelievable. That final, I'll save it for spoilers. But yeah, there's one shot in particular that I just, this man's eyes are incredible. Everyone keeps talking about RDJ. Obviously, he is, in my mind, currently the front runner for Best Supporting Actor. Don't sleep on what's his name, Jason Clarke. He was brilliant, especially in those final 30 minutes.
He made me hate him so much. He did so good.
Man, I hated him. The entire scene. Obviously, my favorite scene is the Trinity test, but one very underrated scene I haven't seen a lot of people talk about was when he's interrogating Kitty, Emily Blunt's character. That was nuts. The score in the background just getting louder and louder. My heart was fucking racing the entire time.
Wait, who are you talking about? Which one? Sorry.
Jason Clarke.
So like in the boardroom when they're like talking to Oppenheimer and interviewing him, he's like the main guy that was talking, being like a real asshole lawyer type guy.
Yeah, he was great. He was really,
yeah,
really good.
he was fantastic. And then, dude, even Walmart Han Solo, like I thought he was great.
Alden Ehrenreich.
Yeah, Alden Ehrenreich.
I'm not getting these all, man.
I don't know his fucking name,
dude. Even even Albert Einstein. Like, so last year we saw Judd Hirsch get nominated in like the Fablemans for having like 2 lines. Albert Einstein, I get like a lot of people are like, oh, it's kind of weird seeing him on screen, but like I don't know, like that final scene was just so impactful. I was like, even just
When I
Yeah.
did first see Einstein, I did have a little bit of a chuckle. Honestly, it was quite weird.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but he's
I can't
also like
really
a
use
weird
it.
guy when you first meet him too. So like that didn't
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, true,
Um,
true.
But yeah, I'll wrap. I want to get the spoilers just because I want to talk a few in-depth things. But yeah, it's a 5 out of 5 for me. It's my best. It's in my mind the best film of the year. I could write a dissertation on the Trinity test scene alone. That shit nearly made me pass out and give me a heart attack when they were counting.
I genuinely was considering stepping
Dude,
outside. It was crazy.
When they
It
were
was too
counting
much.
down from 10, I was losing my shit.
I literally wanted to scream,
wish
be
you
like,
had more
count
mouthwash.
faster. I was like, come on.
Yeah, literally. Like I want to see this. And it that was one of the most like hyped up. Everyone knew that scene was coming, obviously. That was one of the most like hyped up scenes versus living up to the expectations like I've ever seen. Like I don't know how Nolan could have crafted that scene any better.
It's interesting. I'll go into some spoilers, but I heard a few criticisms on the scene you're referring to.
Yeah.
Which I completely disagree with. But yeah, sorry, carry on. I'll go on.
I'm done. 5 out of 5 for me. Best movie of the year. I mean, depending on how the year stacks up, obviously we got a Leo performance, we got a Joaquin performance. Right now, Cillian Murphy's no doubt my best actor.
Yeah, probably for me too, actually. Do I go?
Yeah.
I think Seth now.
Yeah. So I mean, I echo both of these gentlemen. I think it was just an epic film on just an unbelievable magnitude. It was just so big, so grand, such a huge scale. But I think with a Nolan film, by now they're unquestionably technical marvels. You know, they are. Nolan works with the best guys in the industry when it comes to the sound mixing, which actually I like a lot, especially in this film. And that's criticism he gets quite a lot. Cinematography, George, you'll know what's his name again? Van Hoyt?
Hoyt Van Hoytema.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah. Amazing. Scoring this was sublime. I was listening to it this morning, and I just think it was. But not only was it a technical marvel that would completely blew me away, and like George was saying, that scene, the test scene, I have never felt more like I was gonna have like a panic attack in the middle of the cinema. It was crazy. Like
yeah,
I
you
felt
said on Twitter it's like more so than any like horror movie you've seen, right? Like,
yeah, man, it's crazy. Like because a horror movie, you know, if you get like jump scared, it's a quick bang. But like I am slowly waiting for this countdown.
Yeah.
My heart, every beat, my heart's going crazy.
It's literally like, oh my, it's like, and I say that I feel like I've said this a few times across like ReelTok episodes. It's like watching a car accident in slow motion.
In slow motion. Yeah,
it's just like it's anxiety, it's stress, it's frightening. Even the scene, sorry, Seth, for completely cutting you off, but like the scene when Cillian Murphy, when Oppenheimer is talking to the crowd, the shutters are going on behind him. The crowd, you don't even hear them. All you hear is like their feet standing up, and like Cillian Murphy's having an existential crisis. Like that was frightening.
I think if the IMAX was any louder at that point, because I was like in a really good seat, I booked it early, so I was like dead center, middle center. If the countdown was any longer, I think I might have died. Like it was crazy how weird I felt. But yeah, more than it being a visual spectacle, I think it was challenging from a morality perspective, from a bureaucratic perspective. I think it had a really good look authority. I was really like Tyler. I know the basics of Oppenheimer's story. I didn't know the ins and outs, and I chose specifically not to research that before because I do actually really enjoy history. And I did some research like Tyler after because I do really like reading up on that. But I think this kind of, for me, was one of Nolan's best written work because he proved he can. I mean, he's proved it before. Don't get me wrong. I like Nolan a lot, but I mean, this was like his film where he proved, he can do more than just the visual spectacle because this offered so much in terms of its dramatic sense, and bureaucratic sense, especially in that final kind of half an hour period, which I really enjoyed. And I just think not only did it prove that, but it also improved Nolan his talent for creating a visual spectacle, especially with the people he works with. Like I said, the sound mixers, the editors, the cinematographer, the score, it's unbelievable, some of the sequences, and it really is. So far, I think it might be my number one film of the year. I think it is actually. Out of the like 30 films I've seen, I think it is my number one, just ahead of Across the Spider-Verse. And I think it will take quite a lot to beat it because I think it was really good. The only criticism I have of the entire film, there was 20 minutes in like the final act, 15-20 minutes where he's kind of introducing the twist, I guess, which obviously we'll go into, the reveal. And it was kind of, for me, it flowed illogically for 20 minutes, going back and forth between Oppenheimer sequences and the courtroom sequences, where we really weren't going anywhere. And I think it flew illogically just to introduce a twist, which is kind of Nolan's thing, I guess. And I mean, I don't know how he could have done it differently, but that's just my perspective. I didn't enjoy that too much. But I will say as well, again, I've been vocal about 3-hour films. This film did not feel 3 hours at all to me. I think this film felt 2 hours, if that, because I was completely in the whole time. I think it takes a lot to do that, and I think I enjoyed so much of it. One thing that was a bit weird was seeing Benny. Was it Benny Safdie?
I loved him.
I did, but it took me a while.
Yeah, when he first walked into the door, I was like, "Oh, that's Benny Safdie," and I didn't know what character he was playing. So the Russian accent coming out completely caught me off guard. I had no idea who he was playing, so I was like, "Oh, whoa!" And
it was kind of the same with
Once I settled in, I was like, "Okay, he's actually
I really liked him,
killing it right now."
It was kind of say with Kenneth Branagh when I first heard him speak. I was like, "What is happening here?" But after a while, it really worked. And also, no, I'll say this as spoilers, but yeah, it was a 4.5 out of 5 for me. Very close to being a 5 initially. I just think there was 20 minutes in the third act, which I didn't love. It did fly by a little bit, but I'll leave it there until spoilers. 4.5 out of 5. Currently my number 1 film of the year, and I didn't mention the cast, of course. Great. I don't think we need to touch on that too much. You guys already said it. Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon. What was the guy called? The guy in the interrogation. What was his name again?
Jason Clarke.
Jason Clarke.
Yeah, he was great. He was really good. Robert Downey Jr., of course, is probably in the lead for Best Supporting Actor. But like we said before, there really isn't that much competition, from at least what I've seen anyway. But he was fantastic. Really enjoyed him. But I'll let Cam say his spoiler-free thoughts now anyway.
Yep. I won't harp on it too much. Kind of everything you guys mentioned. It's great. Hopefully that he's okay. But I absolutely love this movie. Oh, bud, come on, you're all right. I love this thing. I thought it was so much fun. Or not fun, actually. I take that back. I thought it was a great viewing experience. And then Emma asked me after the movie if it was a sad movie. And I would say I was more sad during Barbie, but this movie was just an existential feeling of dread, just throughout the entire thing. It wasn't particularly make me cry sad. It was just make me hate everything about this world that I'm in and just be depressed that I'm alive kind of thing. That's kind of the feeling I had when I left it. I will say, I had it at a 4 out of 5, but I told you guys I was teetering on it. Or 5 out of 5. Sorry. I was teetering on it. I did drop it to a 4.5. You all spoiled what your number one of the.
Did you rewatch it to do that, or did you just think about it?
So I saw it on Thursday as well. I did. You guys all spoiled your number one of the year for I've already hidden my letterbox for 2023. I hid my letterbox rankings for the year until next Monday. But yeah, I dropped it a little bit to a 4.5 out of 5. And that's mostly because I don't think this felt like a 3-hour movie by any means, and it didn't feel long, but it almost felt with how much there were scenes that were go. There were scenes that were slower paced. It almost felt I'm going to do a little, if you're on YouTube, you get a little extra here. It felt like a car that was bouncing at points, because we were speeding and then we stopped. I'm speeding, stop. And let me grab something for myself.
No, just building off of what Cam was saying to fill in some airtime. So Lights Camera Barstool tweeted this, one of the guys from them, and I totally agree with this. They were I love this movie. The 3 hours felt great, but I could have watched a 2-hour cut of this movie. I also could have watched an 8-hour cut of this movie. It's it could have been cut.
That was a good tweet.
It could have been condensed. Could have been expanded on, whether it's 2-hour cut or 8-hour cut. So just there. Cam,
actually, I don't know if I agree. I think that the 3 hours was perfect for me. I don't think it was too short. I don't think it was too long. It was.
They were saying they liked it. They're just saying they're saying they could have seen a 2-hour cut of this movie and felt like they didn't lose much of it, but at the same time they could have watched an 8-hour cut and had everything expanded and liked that a lot.
No, I would have died with an 8-hour cut. I would have genuinely died.
4 hours purely of the countdown to the Trinity test.
Crazy.
And I don't think I necessarily felt the runtime. I just feel like it had so much, because it was so intense at its high moments, that it had so much starting and stopping for me. It just kind of felt like I was in a car just hitting the brake every once in a while. And that rubs me the wrong way, just so ever so slightly. Like, it's not like I dropped it to a 94 out of 100. Maybe if I watch this thing 10 more times, it becomes my favorite movie ever. I'll obviously raise it a little bit, but Robert Downey, for me, like, I will always see him as Iron Man, like forever. It's just kind of where I'm at with him and how much I love him in that role. This movie like completely took that away. Just like he was so goddamn good as Struss, right? They pronounce it Struss.
Yeah.
So goddamn good. Like, this is without a doubt, in my opinion, the best supporting actor role. And even though we said like he doesn't have a ton of competition, I don't think he has a ton of competition, just even if there were great performances. Like, this, in my opinion, was on the level of like Kihei Kwan from last year. And like, even if there were great performances, would be that, like, you know, at the Oscars, #1 minus 2,000, like just a lock to win this thing. We can move on to spoilers a little bit. The bomb explodes.
No.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So,
Big reveal.
Shit.
yeah, there's not really spoilers. Like, it's clearly a true story. But if you guys want to mention anything.
I did want to say one thing. I don't know about you guys. I've had so many questions and comments about this. Why the fuck is there a rumor there was a 15-minute sex scene? I have had
Because
so
like
many.
Variety came out with like an article saying something, or like some reviewer said like there's from like one of the early screening critics, and like everyone ran with that. And like
It was like
it
two,
just boiled
sex
out of hand.
scenes, about 30 seconds.
I was just like, no. The only reason I'd never believed that was because Nolan has never displayed that ever. Like, he's never had like a fascination with like portraying intimacy in movies, really. Like, obviously everyone always criticizes him for the way he handles females, and a lot of that comes with how he handles like their relationships with the men in the movies. He's never once like
it would be funny if they
dove
were saying
into sex scenes.
because because after obviously spoilers, whatever, Cillian Murphy and Florence Pugh's character, they do have sex after they're kind of sat naked talking to each other. It would be funny if that's what people were referring to, how they just sat naked, which is really weird, because I had so many comments on my review saying, can I go to this with like my mom? How long is the sex scene? It's like, what are we talking about here? It was so bizarre.
French people are definitely
I
looking at
will
Oppenheimer with like the Weenie Hut Jr. roller coaster meme. Like, French people are like,
Yeah.
you think this is nudity in movies? Grow up.
I will say, there wasn't 15-minute sex scene. There was like a 1-minute sex scene, but like 15 minutes of nude chit chatting.
Yeah.
That's not sex.
Just
That's crazy.
naked
But-
conversation.
Dude,
No,
I saw someone that said like it was 15 minutes of straight missionary where the
Yeah,
camera
yeah.
was behind
Yeah, that was literally
Cillian
like
Murphy's ass.
10 seconds. Not yeah.
Also,
none
you
of
couldn't
that,
even
none of
see
that.
Not even.
You couldn't even see anything when they were naked other than Florence Pugh's top off. Anyway, well, it's like, why have we not seen? Do you know what I mean? We've seen all this before. I don't know why the reaction was so
Right.
big to this. It's
Yeah,
just
I
so
don't know.
weird.
Christopher Nolan and Americans are very much prudes
Right.
about that story.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason it went.
God, the
Kind of
two just moving away. The two most stressful scenes, or two of the most stressful scenes in this movie were the bomb test and then the scene
opening,
after.
maybe?
No, the scene where Cillian Murphy is celebrating that that they dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he's like talking to the crowd. The fact that like all sounds cut out around those scenes, like for the bomb test, all you hear is the breathing of people.
I loved, because that
That-
was
You go.
I was just saying that was the criticism I've heard most on Twitter. Was like it was almost anticlimactic. You're having this big build up, and then he goes silent. I loved that. I think that
No,
worked
I love it too.
perfectly.
And it's like, it's one of those things where like you don't think about it that they're 10 miles away from the bomb.
I
And
love
like when you
that.
see
Yeah,
when you see
great.
fireworks, you see like the explosion, obviously, and then you're hit with it. Not something I thought about. I thought the bomb would explode. You'd hear the noise, obviously, and then like it cuts silent for
good,
2
like, 30
2
seconds.
minutes or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
30
yeah.
seconds even.
It also
and
was
you're
like,
like, holy shit, and
Bro,
then it just
I felt like I was watching A Quiet Place. I'm sitting there trying not to breathe myself because I didn't want to make a
crazy, yeah,
single
yeah.
thing of noise. My heart is pounding out of its fucking chest. And then like after the bomb explodes and like they get hit with like that
the wind
force,
kind of thing. Yeah,
I was like, shit. And the way it just came, bro, I cannot stress the sound design of this movie because it's the same thing with that scene where Cillian is talking to that group of people. Like as he like continues to progress, everything goes silent. Even like when the people stand up and cheer, you don't hear them stand up and cheer. All you
that
hear
was
is like,
great. The
all you-
second time.
all you
yeah.
hear is the movement of the chairs and like the feet like standing up. And then like the screaming of that girl just broke my heart
Yeah, 'cause it,
out of nowhere.
it was. I watched that scene this morning because I found it on Twitter. I wanted to show Anna that particular like celebration scene because he says like something about Japan, and then they all stand up and cheer. And then the second time he does it, he says, "We should have used it on the Germans."
Yeah.
It was the second time. That's the point where it goes completely silent, and you just hear the brief like stamp, the brief thing. I thought it was so good. I thought it was such a good, like, clever way of going about it.
I think that was like
that's the scene, right? Sorry, you go. Someone
I was gonna say, I think that's
yeah.
the boldest visual Nolan's ever pulled off in his whole career. Was that scene with the faces being blown back with the sound that mixing? I think that's like, and that's an unoriginal thought too. Like I know Doug and Owen, where people like somewhat criticize Nolan in the past. Like I was DMing them, they're like, that is like the most perfect thing Nolan's ever done. Like that scene was so bold, so innovative a way of showing that it was just so crazy.
Is that the scene also where like Oppenheimer's walking out and he steps on like a burnt corpse?
Yeah. And then Roderick Rules throws up.
Yeah.
That's who throws up. I didn't even notice it was him.
Yeah, that's his only cameo in the movie. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roderick Rules.
No, he says things.
He's
in
the
the
movie a lot.
I only remembered him throwing up.
He's in the movie a lot. He's in the room in Los Alamos.
He is. Yeah,
he's in that room a lot. But whatever. Yeah, I didn't notice it was him throwing up. Yeah, this movie just had so much dread around it, and absolutely just like destroyed everything I felt. I think I felt like the way George felt after Son in this thing. My son's crying, so I'll let one of you guys talk.
No, yeah.
One
like,
thing I want
to take such a deep breath, like Cam said. Like I was just like, holy shit. Like once it ended, I just sat in my seat. I was like, fuck. Like it was a 3-hour movie.
That was my whole theater.
Yeah. Normally you have to 3 hours. Like I got to run to the bathroom, but like we just all stood there and I was like, holy shit. Which this deserves a whole conversation talking about the final scene. So we'll kind of get into that. But yeah, when this ended, I was like, fuck, dude. I haven't ripped a dart or smoked a cig since college. I was like, I need one. Like I was like, holy, and I need like a scotch.
It's coming.
Yeah, I'm like, Jesus, that's heavy. And like me, I was like 40 minutes away from my home for this because I was like the real IMAX, which isn't like super close to me. Yeah, that whole drive home, I was just like, man, it's the same way I felt after watching Joker, where I was like, I'm just like bummed on what this world is right now.
Yeah. One thing, and I mean, I don't think people aren't talking about it, but they're not talking about it nearly as much as like Killian or RDJ. Matt Damon was a stud.
I think it's because people expect
so great.
He was like
because Matt Damon's the best actor.
Stop. But he was so funny. He was so like he felt very passionate about being in this movie, playing this role, and seeing him work off Killian. Their scenes together, like the scene where they're riding the train, the scene before the Trinity test where they're just talking about like near zero. I loved it. Like I thought he was like the perfect, like morally sound character to like work opposite of Cillian Murphy's Oppenheimer, who's obviously having like these absolute moral dilemmas.
Especially in the first scene when they introduce like the antithesis of each other in the first scene, in the classroom area.
I love that. I love their back and forth where like Matt Damon's character was like, people have called you a womanizer, condescending, basically saying people call you an asshole,
communist, and
stuff. Like that
Yeah.
entire conversation was just so like riveting. It was like such a perfect introduction. I want to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, it depends on how the rest of the year goes. Could you see multiple actor nominations in supporting actor for this?
I
movie?
think Emily Blunt could even like get nominated.
No, I think she's a lock. She's a
but
lock to be nominated. I mean supporting
Robert
actor. Yeah.
I
Do you think they would nominate both of them?
Yeah.
I think
like when was the last time one movie had multiple nominations in one category?
Literally last
Jamie Lee
year
Curtis and Stephanie Sue for
Oh fuck!
Yeah.
Right. Shit.
Literally last.
But
year.
no,
Okay.
And
I
the
see
thing
what you're saying.
The best part of Matt Damon for me is he brought such much needed comedic relief to this movie. Like that, it just needed it desperately. And like every line he had, where it's like just like a little joke. He had such a dry sense of humor that Oppenheimer's always so serious, and Matt Damon would always kind of just like break the tension with just like a little like this isn't so serious, which is just which also just builds the horror of the movie because they're literally building a nuclear bomb, but like the general of the military is able to be like joking about it, kind of lighthearted about the situation, and Matt Damon just killed it. He just crushed it.
That was a funny scene where that one guy quit, and then Oppenheimer's like, "What happens if he tells people?" And Matt Damon's like, "I'll just kill him." And he's like, "Nah, I'm kidding."
It's so awkward.
If he's like, "I'm kidding, I won't." In my head, I'm like, "You are not kidding at all, bro."
I like that scene. It's brave of Nolan to, I think, put some kind of awkward humor in this. And I echo Tyler's thoughts in that it was needed. I know why people don't like it. I've actually seen a few complaints about the dialogue at points, which I understand because I think it kind of has to fit the tone at certain points. But I actually quite liked that relief that Matt Damon's character offered because he was like an authority figure, quite a dominating figure, but he also had this kind of softer comedic side that in conversations like that worked really well for me anyway.
That's exactly what I loved about his character is like Matt Damon knew exactly like when he needs to be a little more comedic, which really was few and it's not like he was cracking jokes left and right. It was like very few and far between, but like he obviously everyone saw the scene in the trailer where he's like, why? Because it's the most important thing to happen in human history. And then there were even scenes like when he's working off of Killian where he has to be like a little more reserved. It's like it's such an underrated performance because of like where he's stretching himself as an actor. Like he's going through so many emotions, which I think everyone in this movie is. Can we transition to the ending? Because I really want to talk about it.
Yeah, we got to talk about the ending.
The entire, I mean, we'll get into like deeper spoilers, but the way, and I'm going to keep bringing up Ludwig Göransson's score that I'm talking about like the very, very final scene where like Robert Downey Jr. isn't in the courtroom. He's in like his back room talking to Alden Ehrenreich, and Ludwig Göransson's score where it's like the banging of the footsteps just keeps getting louder and louder and louder. And then it all builds up obviously until that final confrontation with Oppenheimer and Einstein, which I fucking love. And this was this part where that I was talking about in my non-spoilers, the final shot of Killian just on his face. That was
the shot we'd seen all
but to like see it in motion, that one shot, it was cool. Give this man what this dude is doing with his eyes is absolutely ridiculous.
You are loving this guy's eyes,
bro. It reminded me of Tom Hardy in The Dark Knight Rises because you don't see any part of that man's face except his eyes, and the things he does with his eyes in that movie, like just instill fear into my body. And the things Cillian Murphy did in this movie, just with his eyes, was ridiculous.
Yeah, so I do see.
They were also mega blue during this movie, like
stupid blue,
mega blue.
No, the amount of tweets I've seen. Wow, watching Cillian Murphy's cheekbone structure in IMAX was the second coming of Christ.
Was I the only one who thought Cillian Murphy was like, because he's very skinny and lanky looking. I thought he was tall. This film made me realize this guy's quite small. Like
he did look tall, especially in the end when he was getting older and he like emaciated his body. Like the real life Cillian Murphy, like slimmed down a bunch of weight and got like deathly skinny. That made him look so tall.
It was when he was next to Josh Hartnett, and he looked so he's like 5'7". This whole time,
because like Josh Hartnett gives off like tall guy energy. Like when we watch like and Beyond the Sea, Black Mirror, like I was like he's like an imposing, intimidating guy. But then like in this, like Cillian Murphy, I'm like damn, that's a tall dude. But yeah,
I actually really liked Josh Hartnett.
No,
he
was so good. Really and like when this cast is announced, and you have 30 names of people we didn't know immediately who was going to get a ton of runway. Going into this, I didn't expect Josh Hartnett to get so much runway to be talking and having stuff in it, but yeah, he did great in this. And
you know what? Here's a question for you back on the supporting actors, because I was really like blown away by Benny Safdie. Like genuinely, he had more screen time than I expected. He worked with Cillian. Like I loved their relationship. It was like super complicated. And I thought Benny Safdie was so damn good in this movie.
Yeah, it took me like 10 minutes to adjust when I first heard him, but after a while, I think he's a great actor. I really like him.
Yeah,
he
was stunning.
Other than Robert Downey on the supporting actor conversation, I think the like second best supporting actor performance was from Dane DeHaan I love Dane DeHaan or Alden Ehrenreich. I think crushed it in this as well. And Alden Ehrenreich I've always known as a good actor. He kind of gets ripped a little bit because he did a very good job in all honesty to play Han Solo.
He did do a good job. I'm tired of the slander.
He played Han Solo?
In Solo, a younger version.
People try to slander him for that because it's not. I mean, it's not Harrison Ford, but he did a damn good job.
He did a fine job,
and I think he did a really good job in this as well. I also want to mention I did burst out. I did laugh a little bit. I didn't burst out laughing, but probably for this kind of theater, I started laughing pretty hard for during the.
Why have you just put?
Yeah, where,
Well, I
where
get-
did
He
you
hung
get-
him up on a
Cam
coat
just-
rack by the
Cam
back
just
of his
threw
overalls.
his child.
But I started laughing when Albert Einstein
I
popped
said,
on screen
you
because
missed
Yeah.
it. I said the
Funny.
exact same thing as you. It made me laugh when it came
yeah,
out.
because it was just it wasn't because it was a No Way Home type cameo, but like the jokes online about it being a No Way Home
Yeah.
type cameo like made me laugh very
What
much.
were all your thoughts
Oh.
on the John F. Kennedy name drop?
No, that was funny. I thought that was a. That
Can I
was
just say,
a name drop?
Gary Oldman. I really liked his little.
I
line.
didn't know. Okay,
My
I had
friend didn't, and I had to tell him.
I
He
had
didn't
zero
realize.
clue.
Yeah, yeah.
Tyler texted me. I think Tyler, you saw it a day after I did. That night, Tyler texted me like, "Was Gary Oldman the president, or am I
I
bugging?"
remember.
And
Did
I'm
you not
like,
tell by his like mannerisms. And
in
stuff?
my head, I'm like, "You're absolutely out of your fucking mind. That was not Gary Oldman." Also, did we know Casey Affleck was in this movie?
They kind of used him as like some crazy reveal. I don't know if we knew he was in it, but I think it's weird how much of a reveal it was for Casey Affleck.
I
Oh,
mean,
I didn't know he was in it.
I
but they-
think for like the inner Twitter circle of film talkers that like were really deep into film, that's a crazy cameo. For like the
I
average
get it. I love
moviegoer,
Casey Affleck.
yeah,
I do.
Yeah,
But they did for a while. They showed the
They
back
didn't
of his
show
head and
him.
just had him talking. I'm like, I think that's Casey Affleck, but I can't tell for
yeah,
sure.
he like came
Uh,
up on screen, and I'm like, did I know he was in
That's-
this? And
I had
and then
that
I
same
went
thought.
back like a year ago. I had posted a video like going through the Oppenheimer cast, and
yeah,
he wasn't there, and I was like, I
He
don't know.
wasn't.
If,
Oh,
I'm like,
shit.
I don't know if I knew he was like in this movie, but like, yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool cameo.
One thing
thought
I
he
did.
well too. He was just some dick, apparently.
Yeah, he was just an asshole.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
cool.
One thing I did want to say is okay. So I can't remember his name. You know, when what is it? So Cillian Murphy near the start, he travels to. Where does he go now? So he goes to
Germany?
He goes to Netherlands, doesn't he? At one point,
Yeah.
and he meets the guy who I can't remember his name. who's following
Heisenberg?
the No. The other physicist, the smaller. What was his name? He's in the final scene when they're like older.
Yeah,
Is it Rami Malek's character or no?
No. This is early. The guy who met him at the start, who was also
I know.
Jewish, and they speak to him on the train.
Oh,
conversation on the train.
okay. The other.
I'm looking at the
That's
cast.
what
I
he
right
was-
can't find him on the list.
Is it-
Anyway,
Is it David Krumholtz? He plays. I think it is. He plays a fucking
yes,
Santa
it
Claus.
is. The
In
rap-
the Santa
yeah.
Claus, he plays a elf. I think.
So him, I don't know if you guys noticed this, and I found this kind of funny. It's stupid. So at the end, obviously we get the scene where it's 20 years later, whatever it is, and everyone's been aged, and you've got Oppenheimer, Emily Blunt, what's his name, Dylan Arnold, I think it is, Oppenheimer's brother. It was really weird because they showed his face, the guy who he'd met on the train, and they didn't age him at all or put a wig on him, and I found that really bizarre. Do you know in the final scene?
Also,
he was the
David
only
Krumholtz?
guy.
funny enough, I don't think
he
anyone
was
was
aged.
wearing a wig in that scene. I think they had just like put dust
Might have been
powder on their hair.
But at least
I
they
thought-
put like they did
I
like
thought
the
they did age him. I thought
really because I
Yeah.
looked at him and I was like he's not got any more wrinkles. He
I
didn't have
thought he
any
was
gray.
different, but maybe I'm wrong.
Really, I swear he didn't. But I just found it really interesting when I was watching it. Maybe he did. Maybe he did.
I don't know if we're close to wrapping this up, but I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Is this the best biopic since The Social Network?
So what do we
Yes.
count as a biopic?
Like The Wolf
Less
of
an
Wall Street?
individual person,
Well, why? What are you thinking?
The Big Short.
I would
It's
consider
in
that
a
a biopic. Yeah.
Oh, and no, I think this might be top 3, but I also have that Big Short higher than Social Network. So,
Big
I
Short
would-
higher than a Social Network?
Wait, did you say George? Did you say since the Social Network or other
Since
than-
The Social Network.
since the Social
Yeah, so
Network?
since 2010.
Rox-
Okay. No, yeah.
Roxanne is very much
I
up
would
there
have it.
for me personally.
I mean,
I
yeah.
would have it. I would have it the best one since Social Network. I can't think of any other that would come close.
like I don't like Wolf of Wall Street and Damien Chazelle's First Man, Big
I don't
Short,
think
but like I still I don't know.
no, definitely Oppenheimer for me. Definitely Oppenheimer.
I'm
I
very
think-
curious. Like, I really do think I'm on like just a Nolan Oppenheimer seeing it in IMAX high right now. Like, I'm very curious. Like in like 2-3 months time when this comes out on digital, and I obviously buy it. How like my thoughts are gonna hold up just watching it
It
at
will be a
home.
massively different experience. won't it?
Yeah. I'm
I-
very
do you
curious to see that.
Do you guys think that? I actually don't think this will age across the board as one of the higher rated Nolan works, because of what Tyler was saying earlier. When
I don't know.
it is a lot more dialogue driven. And I know it's at 4.4 right now, But at the same time, Barbie and Oppenheimer are both like 4.3s, 4.4s. They'll inevitably go down. They will, because people like giving 5 stars things they haven't even seen yet.
It's also like, as much as we just like praised Oppenheimer, and I think at least me and Tyler are in agreement, this might be like his best written film.
I don't know where I have it yet. It's like top 3, I think.
Yeah, my point is it's 3 hours long. Like this is one of his least accessible films in my mind. It's not 2.5 hour Interstellar where you're like watching like space unfold. Stop. Really cool shit. Like this is a 3 hour on film, black and white, dialogue driven movie. Like describing that movie, you would have thought this movie was made in the 70s.
I wish it was made in the 70s.
Stop it.
Yeah, I think Christopher Nolan's career is just so fascinating because, like I mentioned at the beginning of this review, like how this isn't the typical blockbuster from him. But so it's just interesting because typical like film fan, like film bros, or not even film bros, like the casual moviegoer knows Nolan and probably has their favorite Nolans is like the Dark Knight movies, the Inceptions, the Interstellars of the world, whereas like most casual moviegoers probably hadn't seen like a Memento and stuff. Like I know a lot of my friends have seen a lot of Nolans, but they haven't seen Memento. The Prestige, I feel like, is kind of more under the radar in the general public. Dunkirk isn't a favorite of the general public. But his last 3 movies, Dunkirk, Tenet, and Oppenheimer, are like starting to not be loved by the general audience as much. But like critics and
which I kind of like.
Critics and anti-Nolan people are loving those. I feel like he's like changing the guard a little bit, where Dunkirk was like when like people have been out on Nolan for his blockbuster started really being like, okay, he's on to something here. Tenet being a deconstruction of the modern action blockbuster. Critics, and I've seen a lot of people like, I know like the Doug and Owens of the world, they love that movie as well. And just general critics in general really love it, whereas the general audience is the lowest Rotten Tomatoes. And then Oppenheimer, another one that I think as time goes on, like Seth said, I think this goes down on average rating because it is a 4 hour long or 3 hour long movie that isn't very accessible. But people, especially this one more than any movie I've seen from Nolan, that is where people that are like, I mean, even Paul Schrader, like are people who are saying, I've normally been out on Nolan, but he's really on to something here. So I think he's like kind of shifting his career, which is interesting because he's going for less mainstream appeal, but starting to get a lot more credit from people on his filmmaking ability. So it's just really interesting to see where he goes from here. But yeah, like this is such a good.
This
movie.
is like a little like I guess a little segue from what Tyler just said. But this is also what I think people respect a little more. And this is not a knock to the movie at all. This is an experience. Like this isn't a movie. Like this is an absolute experience. It's an immersive, heart-pounding, gripping experience. And like I said at the beginning of this whole Oppenheimer review, like this was the perfect biopic for Christopher Nolan to take and not make like boring. Like he was able to like flash his creative ability, his filmmaking style, and just do whatever he wanted because like it's the story of the atomic bomb. It's as flashy and bombastic as Nolan's like film career has been.
Yeah, I think he was one of probably the best directors to take this over. From a writing standpoint, you know, if you were to tell me, I've never said Christopher Nolan's a bad writer by any means. I think people way over exaggerate how bad of a writer he is. I think it's maybe his weaker point of his life, but like no one can be perfect in all aspects, right? But I do think if you maybe 3-4 years ago, you were like, he's making a character-driven biopic. Even if you said about Oppenheimer, that's like a lot of dialogue-driven, it could have given a little bit of hesitation. But I do think he was one of the best directors to do this from a like editing design standpoint. He knows what's going to bring in the most engaging, like
He works with just
yeah,
top guys as well. So
yeah, I think he was one of the better directors to do this. Tyler and I were discussing it. Best edited, or like the sound design, obviously I think is the best. And then I think Tyler said this is the best edited movie of the year, or best like editing wise.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you consider like Across the Spider-Verse like in that editing, or is that more like computer generated editing?
I don't think animation gets considered for best film editing at the Oscars. Okay. I could be completely wrong.
Does animation get considered for anything other than?
Yeah, animation doesn't get considered for anything other than best animated feature.
Bullshit.
Which is ridiculous.
I think that was like edited better, but again, it was animation, and so like they can play with it a lot more. Yeah. But I guess if we're talking, if that's not going to get considered, then yeah, this was number one. But I did him and I talked about it a little bit, and I think
I think it's number one. I would say the second for me. One of the strongest points of Beau is Afraid is actually the editing, in my opinion. So I'd say that.
yeah,
But I think
I agree with that.
Yeah, but like when I brought it up to
Man,
Cam, I
that-
was like, "This is the best edited movie of the year," and he's like, "What about Across Spider-Verse?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess like it's just like that wasn't even on my mind, you know? Like it was just kind of like I wasn't even
Because they
thinking
just
about it.
don't. They just don't include animated.
Right, but like
films
I agree with
like-
Cam. Editing of it was phenomenal. But this is probably my favorite ending of a Christopher Nolan movie ever. Like that whole dialogue while showing Cillian Murphy flying a rocket with the nukes flying and then the Earth literally exploding. Craziest ending I've ever seen from Nolan. But also the intro as well. Like Prometheus invented fire. For that
The
he was
intro was
changed.
cool. We haven't even spoke about the intro.
Dude, I was and with like the fire in the background with like those like just texts about
I-
Prometheus and for that he was tortured for eternity. I was like, holy shit, what
knew
am
I
I in
was
store
getting
for?
into.
And then
I
IMAX
did
immediately I
not-
was like, this might be too much for me. I was like, with this fire, I was like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
freak
same,
out already.
same.
So the intro and outro for this movie was like cracked.
The intro.
I'll be honest, I didn't know the movie was starting because I thought there at my Guardians of the Galaxy screening there were trailers for other like Disney projects. Fuck you, Disney. But I thought there were going to be trailers, and then all of a sudden the movie was starting. I'm like, what the hell just happened? So I was a little.
There were
thrown.
trailers at my. I
Really?
saw,
There were
I
none at
saw.
mine.
I know. I saw so many tweets, and I first saw. 'cause
70mm. I saw. all
Yeah,
those,
I think Sydney retweeted something that I saw, and I was like, okay, we have to get there early. So we literally got to the theater. It was me, Sophie, and Sophie's friend. We got to the theater literally at like 11 o'clock because our screening was 11:30. We were like, we probably got there even at like 10:45, 10:50. We got there
I saw
early.
those tweets as well.
Yeah, because we were like, we got to get concession, we got to use the bathroom, like we got to like make sure we're sitting in our seats by like 11 whatever. We were sitting in our seats probably by like 11:05, 11:10. And then 11:30 rolls around and like the green
Crazy.
what is it, like the audience, you know what I'm talking about,
Mhm,
the
yeah.
green thing that comes up before. And like I look at Sophie and I'm like, wait, what the fuck? And yeah, there was like 20 minutes of trailers.
So what
And dude-
happened there is like so the theater chain near me, because there is no IMAX 70mm trailers. So what a lot of theaters did do though is they had two projectors and they'd show trailers and they switched out the projector for what showed the actual movie. Because I did see that. Like it's like my theater chain locally just had the one projector, so they said there's no trailers. But I'd seen a lot of other theaters like say that they did because they just like switched the projector out, like just kind of shifted it over, had the trailers and moved it over.
Yeah.
There was
In-
there was
in
a
the-
lot of issues here with the 70mm. There was a lot of like I saw a lot of tweets. I think someone said in our Discord, actually, our patron Discord, like one of the projectors, like the film crashed, it didn't work, and the 70mm crashed halfway through, and they had to go home and they got refunded. It happened to like more than one place, a few places.
After the trailers, the screen went black. Like before the movie started, the screen went black, and it was for like a good like 45 seconds. And I'm like, wow, can you imagine? Like,
Panic.
just imagine 11:30 p.m. Everyone's here to watch Oppenheimer, and the fucking film like crashes or something. Also, in like the least promotional way possible, seeing that Dune trailer on an IMAX screen was levitating, bro.
I have a question. I had trailers, and one of them they chose to put on IMAX was The Strays, whatever that shit is. That
Really?
crazy. They also put Poor Things on, which I think looks really good. And
Oh, I
Dune.
didn't get any of those
All right,
trailers.
Dude, I
no
on
trailer
trailer
talk, no
move.
trailer talk. No trailer talk.
Fair. I didn't have any of those. Though.
Yeah, I agree. Dune Party looks amazing.
That looked
Come on.
cracked.
It's a trailer talk. Come on. Oh, man. I want to mention, and I forgot to say this. I told my friend right after the movie, so I don't have any physical proof, but I need it to be known. As soon as they said like the bomb could destroy the world, like it could blow up the entire world, I was like, they are 100% going to say that he still did blow up the whole world just from creating this bomb. And I fucking called that ending. I need that to be known. I don't have any physical proof, but in my head, I was like 100%. So
that was
shouting
such
myself out.
a good, like when he's like, remember when I talked to you about how we could set off a chain reaction that could destroy the world? And then it like, it cuts the silence. You see Albert walking away, and then close up of Killian's face. And he's just like, I think we did. I was like,
fucking called it. I knew it.
Yeah, like
So happy.
there's a lot of interesting criticisms or like just like reviews I've read like from like actual, professional critic outlets. So this is an original thought, but how a lot of this movie felt like it was inspired the way Christopher Nolan filmed a lot of it with how he kind of generated the blockbuster comic book movie genre, which is why you saw the reveals where people like, it felt like a superhero the way he was suiting up, or, you know, they pan and don't say someone's name and then it turns around, it's like, oh, it's them. Like, I think a lot of that was very intentional, and it's his commentary on his Oppenheimer's, like, because Dunkirk is a deconstruction of the modern war blockbuster. It's not a war epic. Tenet is a deconstruction of the modern action blockbuster. So he's kind of just continuing this trend with Oppenheimer. There's a lot of undertones of him and his like guilt for what he feels starting like the modern comic book movie blockbuster. That's why he's always been very vocal. Like, no way am I going back to do any of that. Like, do not call me, not doing any of these anymore. So I think a lot of those are very interesting readings.
Question for you guys. Obviously, when I posted my Letterboxd review of Oppenheimer, I got a lot of people commenting, when are you updating your Nolan rankings? I also got a few questions. When are you updating your war film rankings? Would you include this in a war film ranking?
No,
I don't think so.
No, right?
No.
Okay. I thought I was like, but I think the only I would obviously include it in a Nolan ranking and then biopic. I don't know if I would put this in like
I wouldn't put it in war.
Like
no.
I don't put The Imitation Game in my war film ranking.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
either.
actually, do I? That's interesting. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I don't think I would.
Like it obviously takes place during war time, but
war's a really weird one because it's like a Pan's Labyrinth almost.
Like I don't include Pan's Labyrinth in my war film.
But like Banshees of Inisherin, you know, like
Banshees of Inisherin, like Pan's Labyrinth's like it's a fantasy epic. Banshees of Inisherin is a dramedy or something like.
But kind of
good. I've never read that.
To kind of build onto that, like not a lot. There's been some criticism saying that this movie didn't show enough of the impact on Japan or the Trinity test site, how they had to take all that land away from Native Americans. And again, like I tweeted last night, I think it's a very invalid criticism. I mean, everything's subjective, but this movie's subjective. So he wasn't thinking about that stuff. Like he's like, oh, I had a moral issue, but he never really fought that hard to not have the bomb go off. So he just wasn't thinking about those people. Furthermore, we don't need Christopher Nolan to tell us a Japanese people perspective, a Native American perspective. He's not the guy to do that. And Marta McFly did a lot of like great recommendations, shout out her, of Japan films about the impacts of this on their society. And those are the people we want to hear talk about. We don't want some white dude, Christopher Nolan, trying to tell us about how it impacted their culture.
I said this after the film. I think it's very, very hard to do a film like this with a tough subject matter and also political themes as well. And in my opinion, Nolan did a really good job of coming at it in an unbiased way. I think especially when political parties are involved, which are far left, within a US audience and a Western audience, a lot of American films do tend to demonize other parties and demonize cultures and demonize things around that time. And I think Nolan, one of the best things about his film, which I didn't mention earlier, is I think he came across as very unbiased. And we don't see that a lot, let's be honest. There are a lot of political motivations for a lot of films, a lot of opposition to the US, for example, in a lot of American projects. And I think he did really, really well with that. So yeah, I definitely agree. I
mean, and just like furthermore on the politics side, like communism's like an easy punching bag for any movie, but I honestly felt like he really just laid it out. Like he didn't really take a stance. Like I'm not going to say Christopher Nolan's a communist in any way, but like Seth was saying, I feel like he really tackled all these tough political issues without really overflowing his voice on what he thinks is right and wrong, which is why I think that's just subtly tackled it so well. Like the themes, like, and it worked for Barbie to have super over the top themes. It worked for Barbie for that movie. Oppenheimer, on the hand, I felt like had such an impact while not being so in your face, which is why that ending scene where it like all comes together, you're like, shit, that like just blew me away.
If it'd have pushed it and I'd have seen it as more as a focus towards a bias towards the right, potentially opposing communism, not that, I agree or don't agree, whatever my political opinions are. I just hate political bias in films when that is a part of history. And I think Nolan did a really good job of coming at that and just laying out the story and not giving his views or a studio's views, which I think is more the matter. And I think he did a really good job with that. Also, one question for you as well. Not question. Last week, I know Cam, you weren't here, but I'll ask you as well. We obviously did the Nolan ranking, and we all guessed where we think we would place it in Nolan's rankings, if you remember. I said fourth, and I think right now it'll be third or fourth or second. I'm not sure, but it'll be around there. I can't remember what you guys said.
I think I said fourth as well, and that's where it sits for me right now.
Interesting.
I think I said two, maybe one. Like I predicted that it could be one, but it's at two right now. But I'm going to rewatch it. I think it might go up.
Wow.
I'm a big history fan.
Cam, do you want to pretend that you made a prediction?
I didn't make a prediction, but it's sitting at my third or fourth right now. I have it at the same exact score as Memento, and I
I
haven't
didn't realize you
rewatched.
rated Memento that high.
I
Actually.
loved Memento. I just haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know if I want to like put that higher or lower. So maybe I'll rewatch it and we'll see. But I do think, that's kind of wraps up Oppenheimer. Great review. Again, actors and writers, most important part of this movie. Please support in any way you can. That is the most important topic that we can bring up on this podcast, is supporting them in any way.